I always feel like family can work together. Not always easy, but at the same time, as long as they keep it within the family and they communicate, it's a good thing, right?
Well, honestly, they surprise me, right? Yeah. As they vacation together, they take care of one another's children.
That's great.
We do holidays together, go to church together. I mean, honestly, as a parent, could not ask for better than that.
Having a beer with Fred is really about getting to people's passion and what makes them tick. Having a beer and having honest, frank, clear conversation that inspires our audience is what it's about. Cheers, Matt.
Yeah, brother.
I met you many years ago, and now like maybe 12 when we were in Orlando at Sea Dog. And I was in rough shape over there. I've talked about this in other videos where I was one of my toughest one trying to compete against Disney. Never compete against Disney.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. You think Orlando is this magical place that's just easy to do business. It's not easy to do business anywhere, right?
No, it's tough everywhere. Give me your full name and spell it.
Yeah.
So we get.
So I'm Matt Loder Sr, Mattloder.
Yeah.
Senior. Yep.
And you're a fourth generation or
third generation Crabby Bill.
Crabby Bills in Indian Rocks Beach?
Yep.
Indian Rocks Beach, Florida.
Yeah, Indian Rocks Beach, Florida. Sorry.
Yeah. Instantly, I had a connection with you because you talked about your family and being in a family business. And I grew up in a different type of family business. My dad ran a home for veterans, but you had this stewardship mentality of it.
Sure.
And recently, last week, a good friend of ours, Jay Baruti, brought us all together. There were probably 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7 of us, but 5 or 6 restaurant, real estate people in the beach areas. They from, Indian Rocks all the way down to maybe Madeira owned property. And you said something very interesting to me, which made me think, okay, we need to meet and do an interview and talk about it, or podcast. And that was, I need to protect the future of my next generation so that their business is here for them. What was created by my relatives or family, whatever, I don't know exact specifics, but it really hit me when you said, if we don't do something now, and it relates, this isn't a political show, this is about entrepreneurship, but I think it does, every once in a while, you have to talk about efficient ways to do things. And what made you really say that?
Well, it's been around a long time. My family has been in this area, in the seafood restaurant business for 50 years.
50 years.
Yeah, since 1975. Yeah. And so, and then 1983, we actually got the money saved up to own our own property there in Indian Rocks Beach and created the Crabby Bill brand there. And we've been...
Which is a fun place.
Yeah, we've been lucky to be in there for 42 years now.
Yeah.
In that particular location. But my whole thing is about trying to protect for the next generation, protect for my grandchildren, looking at who's going to eventually the family business and how to do that. But one of the things that came up after this 2024, first the pandemic, right? We were closed for a period of time, 6 weeks, I think, here in Florida with that.
Which was very lucky, because in Maine, we were comparable to a lifetime up there.
Yeah.
What felt like a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but we made it through that. And then this hurricane, now we've experienced hurricanes before, but never like these.
No, this was the double whammy.
Yeah. Double whammy, and it wasn't a direct hit, but it was enough.
The surge.
Yeah, it was enough to go ahead and understand how detrimental that could be to our business. And it made me consider all those things about other long-term family businesses that I was familiar with in the market here,
Yeah.
And some of those were very close to us in proximity, but I didn't know all their stories, but I came to research those a little bit deeper and understanding it. Some of those were, went away because of financial crises.
Yeah.
And some of those long-term family businesses went, not by any fault of the actual people. 2008 crisis, financial crisis in the world, went ahead and took out some of those, what looked to be good, sound business ideas then, and long-term established family businesses were whopping. And then with this hurricane here, well, there was another one in 2012 with another family business that I don't know if I want to mention the exact one, but a local family business that had been here since the 40s or 50s.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with the owner, the family who previously owned this property and been involved with that, the patriarch of that family business. And he's like 75 now, and he's on a cane, and came in and talked to me, and I asked him his story. And he shared with me, that, they had a restaurant business. They had lots of property holdings. They had like 9 acres of waterfront property or waterfront property. Very envious pieces of property, you do backflips for. And he wound up losing it because the restaurant could no longer maintain the total operation costs. And then they had a cruise ship that was parked there. The cruise ship went away, and he wound up losing that property to creditors. And so, and of course, then the hurricane situation for me to say, wait a minute, it only takes, if that hurricane had done a little bit more damage to my family business, how long would I have been, not the time to go to your bank and ask for them to go ahead. I can't make the mortgage payment. Yeah. And I also need you to lend me money to rebuild this property. That's not the way to do, right? No. So thinking about the
plan ahead. Yeah.
Planning ahead.
One of the big things that came out of that meeting too was, your point about wanting to make sure the beaches and where we are in towns like Indian Rocks and Treasure Island. And recently I've had some friends just express pure frustration about where the towns are with getting things approved. Like a buddy of mine in Treasure Island, Mike LaBelle, and Jen were bought a home that had been damaged, and they figured it'd be easy to get a demolition permit. And they were like 2.5 months to get a demolition permit. And he's a guy who's going to move and have a home here, and he's kind of really scared. So the point in the meeting we were talking about was trying to get the county to get involved in oversight for running planning and approvals and inspections. You think that's a good idea?
I don't, as long as the county can perform. Yeah. That's one of the things I said to the county commissioner right with us was, county has to support it by performance, because if they don't perform, then people are going to say, hey, we're asking you to do this, and then you don't. So, and like everybody in my business, labor is more challenged than any time in my history. All right. I go to the doctor's office, and I tell a story. I went to the doctor's office, and I was checking out. I was behind a 80-plus-year-old woman that was checking out, and she complained to the young lady who was checking her out at the doctor's office saying, I call here, but I can't get through. And because the phone was ringing, and the young lady behind the counter said, Miss, it says, if we answer the phone, then I wouldn't be able to check you out.
Yeah.
So,
which one you want me to do? Right.
And I said, all the 80-some-odd-year-old girl wanted to do was to make an appointment, or to check her appointment. Not getting it online, but it's the medical industry, the car dealership. They're all industries.
The ones that use technology the best and use it as friendly for people that don't necessarily understand technology, like these portals. I'm a patient at Mass General, and the portals, my wife really understands. I don't understand them as well. When she uses those, we get appointments, and we get service, we get other things that are more efficient than, and they do a really good job with it, where I've seen some other areas not do so well. So potentially into the future, because these small towns won't have the resources that the county has. And if the county can provide that, I think it's worth giving that an opportunity for the towns to opt in, because right now a lot of towns are in disarray, and they've lost so many key people. Each one of these towns have lost, whether it's been a fire chief, police chief, whether it's been something else. And, I think that potentially no one would lose their jobs if they could somehow share services, would expand the ability of the.
Yeah, I think you have a replication of services, and you said it initially, if all these towns, the actual people who live inside of these cities are so much smaller than what they were.
Right.
Like in Rock Beach, it used to be 4,400 residents. Now I think we're 2,200 full-time residents.
Which really, even 4,400 is not that many. Right. Just, so in tech, really small towns of 20,000 people. Right. I don't think there's any reason why some of the basic services. And at the end of the day, if you have licensed plumbers, licensed electricians, and these services are being provided, it ought to be a quicker, easier way to get things done in today's world. They built these things when there were no inspections. They've lasted years and years, and now it just seems to be ridiculous that the approval process is taking longer than.
Doesn't make any sense to us, right? We're business people. We say we couldn't run a business that way, and you can't run a town.
Yeah. And that we're customers, right? And the unfortunate thing is they're overwhelmed. These towns are right now are overwhelmed with what they have. Listen, the town, and the people are all trying to do the right thing. They're good people. I think they'd even be relieved if it was a way to maximize their ability to deal with other local town services, because that whole department's difficult.
I think it's very similar. Only thing I know is restaurant business, seafood business, right? And so I know that if I have a standard for performance for my servers, my bartenders, and labor gets tight, right? So all of a sudden my manager said, well, I can't fire anybody because I can't replace them. That's a problem. If somebody doesn't perform, if I don't fire them, I won't need them. Because my customers won't be here anymore.
Well, a lot of people shut down up north in Maine. They couldn't staff places. And some of it happened from, that exact reason. And I did have circumstances, that exact thing, where we dealt with a lot of things that we wouldn't normally have dealt with. Right. It used to be that, there were a lot of things you used to not be able to have a cell phone. If you were working with us, your cell phone had to be shut off and in your bag. Now we can't get away with that. People will say, well, I'm not going to work here. I'm going to go over here. Yeah. And that's just kind of the way it goes.
But there's it's the same thing with government, right? Right. Authorities in government, I think it's the same thing. They don't have standards, so wind up losing.
Right. Well, hopefully they can get more efficient. I think, honestly, I think what I heard at that meeting and guys' ideas, and I think it's worth a try. And I think a lot of people that work for us that lost homes, who try to get back into homes or want workforce housing or want opportunities, they're going to be willing to opt in and give that a try too and support it. It's not just business guys going to say, hey, we want this. I think there'll be probably even more people that just have been experiencing trying to get a permit or trying to get information or whatever. Say, okay, there's got to be a better way. Because
I think the other thing that was interesting in that conversation that happened that day was about public transportation.
Yeah.
Because the need for public transportation for my employees were not alike, but the public itself and people who don't drive anymore, people who want to drive anymore, own a car anymore. That public transportation, I was not an advocate for it 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I've become a great advocate for it because my staff needs it and it's helpful for them. It's helpful for them. They can get to and from my work, right?
Yeah.
My place of business, their work.
And again, I think that's how it gets run, how it gets evolved into the next rendition, and how they leverage technology for that, how gaps get finished and filled. I'm a big YouTube Uber guy. I love using Uber, and I think they're, a year or 2 years, 10 years from now, 3 years from now, there'll be driverless cars. There's probably ways that'll help this area. This area is such a beautiful place to be, and is truly so undeveloped. I mean, when you look at it, there's a lot of properties that will not be here, but then there'll be other developments. And I don't think it'll get overdeveloped. If it's incorrect.
I say it like this, Fred. We have a public asset out there. It's called beaches.
Yeah.
Gulf of America.
Right.
But the thing about it is that people are going to come to this beach, our beaches, along the Gulf beaches, visitors, locals, people who live in Lakeland. They're going to come to those beaches because they're public. It's a public asset, right? So they're going to come. You have to have a place for them to park.
Yeah.
You have to have a place for them to pee.
Yeah.
And if you don't, they're still going to pee. Yeah. And they're still going to park.
Right. Somewhere.
They're going to park in front of your house.
Right.
That you don't want.
Right.
But so having a public parking place for them that they can purchase is better than going ahead and leave it up to them. And so for a lot of people who live, particularly in my town in Indian Rocks Beach, some people are saying, well, we don't want anybody else to come.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, you don't own the beach. I don't own the beach.
Right. Well, and people are, I hate to put it this way, people are dying off.
Yeah.
If you don't encourage young people and young families and young people to start enjoying it, I grew up in Maine when we'd summer on the east coast of Florida, go to Fort Lauderdale. As a young kid, I went there because my uncle always went there for a month and played golf, my Uncle Dick, and I got fortunate enough to go down and visit him, and I fell in love with Fort Lauderdale. Now Fort Lauderdale is boomed, and through a friend found this the beaches here, and it's a little cooler, like early in the year, November, December. Sometimes you don't get the weather you do even in Naples or across, but the people here are so friendly. And I've gotten to meet so many people like yourself and others, and it's a real community. And you got, you basically got, I of the Bucks, the Lightning. You've got the Rays, you've got Rowdies, you like sports. It's a great community. And then you have real towns that have community. They have Lions clubs. They have all the little things. And I've never seen such a philanthropic area with look at downtown St. Pete, the number of museums and the people that give back. It's like,
well, it really is vacation too, Fred. Yeah. Between Tampa International Airport, and St. Pete Clearwater Airport, it's easy to get in and out of here.
Yeah.
For a lot of other.
No, I got like 4 airports I can get to and get to Maine within 3 hours to 5 hours, and which is unique. Like if you're in Miami, when I was there, it was an hour and a half just to drive to the airport because of the traffic. But listen, they're all beautiful places, but we have something unique here. And your point about preserving it, improving it so that it is sustainable, and, working with infrastructure, planning for the infrastructure, and being ready for the coming storms and thinking forward. Yeah. I think we're fortunate that we do have people that will listen, where I've been in some communities like, no, not my backyard. No, they'll let the piers fall into the water before they'll fix them. Man, we've been, 15, 20 years trying to get a dredging in the Portland Harbor when piers are falling. And I love Portland, Maine. I love Maine, but at some point, the not my backyard stuff has to end, and it may take state government to overrule and say, no, we need to do these things in these communities because the reason housing's so expensive and other things is you're not letting things be built. You're over-regulating, and that's a great way to stop that.
And that happens with some of this stuff is my concern too. Like we lost a lot of the single floor residences, right? So it was a 1960 build, a 1950 build, and it was a single floor, and I could rent that place
from
out.
Clearwater, right? From Clearwater to Terra Verde, that's what it's all.
Oh yeah, we lost them.
And the beaches on tap.
There were inexpensive places for somebody who was renting out a single, efficiency apartment that we attached to their home or an old home that basically hadn't changed in the last 40, 50 years, but if it's still functional, it's still a toilet flush, the electric worked, so they were renting those places out, $1,200 a month, $1,500 a month, you define them.
Yeah.
And a lot of those places took a major.
So it is. So you were saying that we need to change some of the zoning laws to make it more flexible to build workforce housing.
Yeah.
Maybe get rid of the parking requirement, maybe, because there's mass transit now that wasn't before, maybe make the density higher, that type of thing.
That's why I'm a proponent of like Fort Pinellas, right? Because Fort Pinellas is a quasi-governmental agency, right? They get funding, but they're not directed by the county commission. And so, but their whole thing is about sharing zoning issues with those beach communities inside of Pinellas County.
That's the model you look at.
Yeah, but they create the model. But the reality of it is you don't have, you as a city commission don't have to adapt any of that stuff. Yeah. Right. And
you can opt in or opt out.
Yeah, you can opt in or opt out. And it doesn't matter what.
Well, you get asked, you have to address the hard questions. Like, do you want to be able to have the services? Do you want to be able to have the tax base? Do you want to be able to go out to dinner and have people wait on you because they need a place to live?
That or the safety. Yeah. Right. Because one weather event can take out the livelihood of a third of the housing here. Yeah. Well, that's a challenge. Look what happened in Fort Myers with the inn.
Yeah.
Fort Myers.
It still hasn't come back.
No, it still hasn't come back. But they lost. If you looked at it in comparison, we didn't have a direct hit like they did. Yeah. But the thing about it is if you look at it in comparison, they lost, or even the California wildfires. Talk about 10,000 buildings. Yeah. Hey, how do you come back quickly? The people that are there could go away. The people that are
I'm sure most of them did, right?
But the people who made it through. And even if if your restaurant or bar or your business, your office building wasn't affected, guess what? The people who lived,
they're gone.
But
we had that when we reopened here. We didn't have as many people come back as quick until they saw everything was okay and they started to come back. And it's still a little light. You can feel.
But imagine 10,000. But potentially one weather event here, a direct hit here, could take out a significant amount of and in the recovery period, unless they're case-hardened buildings, unless the construction is already brought up to standards to be able to withstand the flooding in the first floor level, and
that's enough. That's why we're going to need some compact, well-built, using some of this new technology with a high density to provide housing for workforce housing and others too that want to have a place, to retire to or be involved in. And we really have a huge infrastructure base here between here and downtown, the beaches in downtown St. Pete and the whole peninsula, Gulfport. I mean, there's a lot of available property, and there's enough infrastructure with everything to probably triple or double in size. And people might freak out, but the reality is, I mean, I don't feel like there's a lot of traffic here, and compared to other areas. And if they use, if they do this high-speed rail or some of these other things, it'll make it even more enjoyable for everybody.
I think that the naysayers, the people who, they don't want me here. They don't
want me here.
Oh, I had somebody recently say, "Oh, well, we liked it when it was dirt roads."
Yeah, right.
Guess what? That is not coming back. Horses are not viable. They're not going to come back with horses and carriages. They're not coming back to dirt roads. So, that's a pipe dream. But people are not leaving.
Yeah, in Portland, Maine, where I grew up in Little Town, Gray, Maine. But in Portland, they used to people that said, "Oh, geez, I love Portland the way it used to be 30, 40 years ago." Well, you weren't there then, because you wouldn't walk downtown at 8, 9 o'clock at night. You certainly wouldn't let your wife or girlfriend or daughter walk around back in the days of the Friendship 3 and some of these bars that were, the guys coming off from different places in the world you wouldn't want to hang around with. Right. But at the same time, now we have something special here. You're committed to protecting it for your family. And what are the different names? Are they all Crabby Bills all year long?
Crabby Bills in Sankey Beach and in Rocks Beach and in Palm Harbor now.
Yeah.
And then we have the Bon Appetit in Dunedin's White Tablecloth is right at the marina.
Yeah.
Right there. So White Tablecloth Restaurant's been there for 46 years.
Yeah.
Actually, more than that. Next year, I think we're 50 years that location's in there. We bought it a couple years ago to add it to our portfolio business.
Yeah.
We do the Cabanas Grill in Clearwater Beach. Eddie's Roof Cup Bar in Clearwater Beach. Then one of the hotels there, the Hampton Inn in Clearwater Beach. And then we do Jake's Coastal Cantina Mexican restaurant in Rocks Beach.
Okay.
Monster Lobster, a main.
Oh, did you get that?
Yeah, that's ours.
From the Boxer?
No, from JD's. It turned from JD's into the
okay.
That's ours. Monster Lobster.
Well, fun.
But then the Guilty Sea Sports Pub.
Okay.
In Rocks Beach. So
nice.
So a lot of different things.
That's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Well, cheers to you, and
thank you.
Cheers to your family, and
same here, you bro.
We get a son in the near future and other daughters, and same. Yeah, it's fun. That's what makes this business fun, right?
For sure.
Sure.